It is 1989. Japan's asset bubble had reached its peak. At the height of the boom, the Imperial Palace grounds in Tokyo were said to be worth more than all the real estate in California. Nissan was swimming in cash, and they had a question. What happens when you give engineers unlimited money and tell them to build the best car in the world?
The answer was the Infiniti Q45.
A luxury sedan with no grille, no wood trim, no apologies. It had an overbuilt, high-revving, clean-sheet 4.5-liter V8 that felt more aggressive than any luxury engine should, suspension that could defy physics, and build quality that embarrassed the Germans. On paper, it had everything. But it failed, spectacularly. While Lexus became a household name, the Q45 became a ghost. The question is simple: why did a car with everything fail so completely? The answer goes deeper than bad marketing or poor timing. The Q45 failed because of a single design choice that Nissan's engineers thought was a stroke of genius, but American buyers saw it as an insult. To understand why that choice was so catastrophic, we need to go back to the moment when Nissan believed anything was possible. Between 1986 and 1991, Japan experienced an economic phenomenon that would never be repeated. The asset bubble economy turned the country into a money-printing machine. Banks handed out loans with almost no oversight. Corporations expanded into every industry imaginable. Automakers, already dominant in global markets, were flush with profit. In the mid-1980s, Nissan was no exception. The company launched the 901 movement. The name came from a simple goal. By 1990, Nissan would build the best handling cars in the world, not just competitive. The best. Period. This was not marketing talk. Engineers were given budgets that would make modern accountants faint. If a component could be made better, it was made better. If a system could be more advanced, it was made more advanced. Cost was irrelevant. The only question that mattered was whether it improved the car. The context for this ambition was decades of being dismissed by European manufacturers. Throughout the 1970s, Nissan and Toyota had been viewed as makers of economical transportation, not serious automobiles. Mercedes engineers openly mocked Japanese attempts at luxury. BMW representatives suggested that Japanese companies should stick to what they understood. The insult stung because it was partially true. Japanese luxury sedans of the 1970s were derivative copies of European designs with inferior materials and clumsy proportions. The 901 movement was Nissan's answer to that condescension. It was a declaration that Japanese engineering could not only match European standards but exceed them. The goal was to make cars so good that the Europeans would have to acknowledge defeat. This was not about profit. It was about pride. At the same time, Japanese automakers faced a strange problem. Export quotas limited how many economy cars they could sell in the United States. They could not just keep shipping cheap sedans. They had to move up market. They had to compete with Mercedes, BMW, and Cadillac. The 901 movement gave birth to cars that are still legendary today. The R32 Skyline GTR dominated touring car racing with a sophisticated all-wheel drive system and twin-turbo inline-six that humiliated far more expensive European rivals. The 300ZX arrived with variable valve timing, twin turbos, and a chassis so well-balanced it challenged Porsche and Corvette on equal terms. Even the humble Sentra SER, a compact economy car, received a high-revving twin-cam engine and multi-link rear suspension that embarrassed cars twice its price on back roads. These were not just good cars, they were statements. Each one represented Nissan's engineers being given the freedom to pursue perfection without compromise. The R32 GTR used ceramics in its turbochargers. The 300ZX had electronically adjustable shock absorbers. The Sentra SER had limited slip differential as standard equipment on a $16,000 sedan. This was the engineering culture that created the Q45, a culture where cost-benefit analysis took a back seat to technical achievement, where the question was not whether a feature was necessary, but whether it was the best possible solution. The priority was perfection. In 1989, Nissan created the Infiniti brand to challenge the European luxury establishment. Toyota had just launched Lexus. Honda already had Acura. The race was on. Nissan assembled an elite development team with one mission: create a flagship sedan that rejected Western luxury conventions entirely. They were not interested in copying Mercedes. They wanted to redefine what luxury meant. The Q45 was the result. It was built on the G50 platform, derived from the Nissan President limousine. It had a 4.5-liter V8. It had multi-link independent suspension at all four corners. It had technology that would not become common for another decade. But more importantly, it had confidence. Nissan genuinely believed they were building the future. They believed American buyers were ready for a new kind of luxury, a Japanese kind of luxury, minimalist, restrained, intellectual. They believed buyers would appreciate engineering purity over chrome and wood. They believed people wanted to be educated, not just impressed. That confidence shaped every decision about the Q45, every design choice, every marketing campaign, every feature. It was the kind of confidence you only get when money is no object and failure seems impossible. That confidence would doom the car from day one. Nissan's design team had a philosophy. They called it the Japanese concept of luxury. It meant minimalism, restraint, intellectual purity. It meant rejecting everything American and European buyers had been taught to expect. This philosophy had roots in traditional Japanese aesthetics. The idea was that true luxury reveals itself through subtle perfection rather than obvious display. Quality speaks for itself without ornamentation. The space between elements matters as much as the elements themselves. In Japanese design, emptiness is not absence, but intention. Nissan believed American buyers were ready for this approach. They thought decades of chrome excess and fake wood veneer had created fatigue, and that sophisticated buyers would appreciate restraint and authenticity. They thought the market was ready to evolve beyond the visual vocabulary established by European luxury brands in the 1950s and the 1960s. They were completely wrong about what American luxury buyers actually wanted. American luxury has never been about restraint. It has always been about abundance. More is more. Presence over subtlety. Immediate recognition over quiet confidence. The most visible decision was the front end. This was the missing feature promised earlier. The Q45 had no traditional grille. Instead, there was a smooth, body-colored panel with a large cloisonné Infiniti badge in the center. No chrome, no presence, no visual anchor. To understand why this killed the car, you need to understand what a grille actually does. Yes, it moves air for cooling, but in luxury cars, the grille is also the identity badge. The status cue, the visual anchor that tells everyone what they are looking at. When you pull up to a restaurant, a country club, a business meeting, the front of your car speaks before you do. A Mercedes grille announces wealth. A BMW kidney grille announces success. A Cadillac grille announces American achievement. These are not just design elements. They are social validators. The grille is the car's face. Humans are hardwired to read faces. We assess status, threat, and friendliness within milliseconds of seeing a face. A car without a recognizable face triggers the same discomfort as meeting someone wearing a featureless mask. Let's play a game. Look at these three cars, a Mercedes, a BMW, a Cadillac. You know exactly who is driving them. You know their status. You know their values. Now look at the Q45. It is not just different. It is silent. It refuses to play the game. Nissan removed the face entirely. The Q45 arrived with a smooth, anonymous front end that communicated nothing. When a buyer pulled up in a Q45, bystanders did not know what they were looking at. They could not place it. They could not assign it value. If your luxury car cannot communicate your status to others, it has failed its primary social function. The proof came from Nissan's own dealers. Within months of launch, showroom traffic revealed the problem. Customers would walk past the Q45 and gravitate toward competitors. When salespeople asked why, the answer was consistent. It does not look like $40,000. Dealers complained that the Q45 was one of the hardest cars they had ever tried to sell. The pitch required explaining what the car was not, rather than what it was. It was not trying to look like a Mercedes. It was not following traditional luxury conventions. It was not for everyone. That last point was the problem. Luxury buyers do not want to be told a car is not for everyone. They want to be told the car is perfect for them specifically. The Q45's pitch required the customer to appreciate Japanese minimalism, to trust that the engineering underneath justified the anonymous exterior, to believe that resale values would hold, despite the lack of traditional status markers. Salespeople could not make that pitch work. Customers would listen politely, then walk over to the Lexus showroom next door, where the pitch was simple. It is like a Mercedes, but better and cheaper. The pattern was clear. Customers did not instantly recognize the Q45 as an expensive luxury sedan. They did not spend time examining it. They moved on. The Q45 was not being rejected after consideration. It was being dismissed on sight. Meanwhile, the Lexus LS400 understood the assignment perfectly. Toyota's designers did not just study the Mercedes S-Class, they reverse-engineered its social signaling. The LS400's grille was a deliberate homage to Mercedes. Wide, chrome, vertical bars. The design practically shouted, "This is a luxury car." The message was instant and unmistakable. When an LS400 owner pulled up to the valet, everyone knew they were looking at something expensive. The car communicated status before the driver opened their mouth. It provided social validation, which is what luxury buyers are actually purchasing. The car itself is secondary to what the car says about you. The Q45 said nothing. Or worse, it said, "I bought something strange, something unmarketable, something that will make people ask questions I do not want to answer." Nissan's engineers thought they were sophisticated. They thought American buyers were ready to move beyond chrome and visual excess. They thought people would appreciate restraint and minimalism once they understood it. They were asking buyers to educate their social circles, to explain why their car looked different, to defend their purchase. Luxury buyers don't want to defend anything. They want validation. They want certainty. They want their peers to immediately recognize they made the right choice. The Q45 demanded explanation. The LS400 demanded nothing. One car required its owner to be an evangelist. The other let the owner simply enjoy the status. To Nissan's engineers, the smooth front end was elegant. It was aerodynamic. It was modern. To American buyers walking into showrooms, it looked unfinished. The most common question dealers heard was simple. Where's the front of the car? The interior followed the same philosophy. No wood trim, no plush leather excess, just clean lines, precise controls, and advanced technology. The dashboard was functional. The seats were supportive but not overstuffed. Everything was designed with purpose, not decoration. Nissan believed this was honest luxury, real luxury, the kind that didn't need to announce itself with fake wood veneer and chrome accents. They thought buyers would appreciate the difference. But luxury has never been about honesty. It's about performance, the performance of status. And the Q45 refused to perform. The marketing campaign reflected this thinking. Infiniti's launch ads did not show the car at all. They showed rocks, trees, waves crashing on a beach. Each commercial was shot like a meditation on Japanese aesthetics. The car itself never appeared. The Infiniti logo floated over these nature scenes, disconnected from any product. It was a disaster. Buyers were confused. Dealers were furious. Competitors were delighted. While Infiniti ran abstract art pieces, Lexus was showing their actual car and explaining why it was better than a Mercedes for $20,000 less. The fundamental miscalculation was assuming American luxury buyers wanted to be educated rather than impressed. Customer confusion extended beyond styling. The Q45's cabin was quieter than the competition. The materials were higher quality. The engineering was more sophisticated. But none of that mattered if buyers walked past it in the showroom. Dealers started asking for changes almost immediately. They wanted a traditional grille. They wanted wood trim. They wanted something that looked like it cost $40,000. Nissan resisted for a while. They believed in the vision. They believed buyers would come around once they understood what the Q45 represented. But the sales numbers told a different story. Infiniti was selling peace and tranquility to the public. But deep inside the engine bay, they were hiding a piece of hardware so over-engineered, it was actually tested in professional racing configurations. To understand the Q45, you have to look at the engine Nissan built for a war that never happened. While the styling confused buyers, the engineering underneath was building something remarkable. The Q45's engine was not designed for luxury, it was designed for war. Put your foot down in a Q45 and something felt different. The 4,000-pound sedan did not just accelerate, it lunged. It hit 60 miles per hour in under 7 seconds in period tests, which was genuinely quick in 1990. But the speed was not the remarkable part. The remarkable part was how it felt eager at any speed, like it wanted to rev, like it had been built for something more violent than ferrying executives to business lunches. That feeling was not an accident. It was the result of engineering choices that made no sense in a luxury sedan, but made perfect sense in a race car. But do not take my word for it. Listen to what an overbuilt luxury engine sounds like when you take the mufflers off. The VH45DE was built with 3 pieces of evidence that it was designed for war, not luxury. First, the forged steel crankshaft and connecting rods. This was the same construction method used in race engines. It cost 3 times more than cast iron, weighed more, and could survive forces the Q45 would never see. Second, the sodium-filled exhaust valves found in the 1990 through 1993 models. Each valve contained liquid metal inside to dissipate heat, a technology borrowed from aircraft engines and race cars. Luxury sedans do not generate enough heat to need it, and Nissan eventually removed them to save money. But the original design was built for extreme stress. Third, the full-length main-bearing girdle. This turned the bottom end into a monolithic racing-grade unit, adding weight and cost for durability that exceeded any reasonable street use. The engine produced 278 horsepower at 6,000 revolutions per minute and 295 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 revolutions per minute. Those numbers were conservative. Independent testing suggested it was underrated, likely producing closer to 290 horsepower. Nissan had a habit of understating output to avoid insurance penalties. The transmission was a purpose-built 4-speed automatic designed specifically for the VH45DE. Smooth, strong, calibrated for both refinement and performance. Shifts were nearly imperceptible during normal driving, but firm and quick when you pushed it. Here is the problem. Buyers did not want any of this. They wanted smooth and quiet. They wanted an engine that disappeared. Nissan gave them bulletproof and eternal, which missed the entire point of luxury. Luxury buyers weren't planning to keep their cars for 300,000 miles. The VH45DE's real legacy didn't reveal itself until years later. As Q45s aged, the engine proved nearly impossible to kill. High-mileage examples routinely passed 200,000 miles, with nothing more than oil changes. Enthusiasts started pulling VH45DE engines from junkyards and swapping them into other cars. The engine became a favorite because it was powerful, reliable, and dirt cheap on the used market. Nissan built an engine for eternity when the market wanted comfort for the lease term. As impressive as the engine was, it wasn't the Q45's most controversial party trick. That title belonged to a suspension system that made the car move in ways a 4,000-pound sedan shouldn't be able to move. It felt like the laws of physics had been suspended until the bill came due. The engine was only half the story. The chassis hiding underneath was even more ambitious. Take a Q45 with the full active suspension option through a corner that would make a Mercedes lean like a sailboat. The Q45 stays flat. Completely, eerily flat. Passengers in the backseat barely notice the turn. It feels like the laws of physics have been suspended. Then take that same corner in a Lexus LS 400. The body rolls. The passengers feel the weight shift. It's smooth, controlled, luxurious. It feels exactly like what a 4,000-pound sedan should feel like. The Q45 felt wrong by feeling too right. And that wrongness came from a hydraulic system so complex it scared both owners and repair shops. The full active suspension was Nissan's most ambitious gamble, proven by 3 specs. First, 10 sensors and 4 hydraulic actuators. The system anticipated body roll before it happened, adjusting each corner independently hundreds of times per second. The car cornered flat, like it weighed nothing. Second, it added 92 kilograms and killed fuel economy by 10%. Over 200 pounds of hydraulic complexity for handling most buyers would never use. And finally, the repair bills were so high that owners swapped back to conventional springs. The HICAS four-wheel steering met the same fate. Most owners disconnected it rather than fix it. When it all worked, the Q45 handled sharper and more eagerly than the Lexus LS 400. But that wasn't what buyers wanted. That was the problem. Buyers wanted isolation. They wanted to float over rough roads, not feel connected to them. They wanted a car that made the world outside disappear. The Lexus LS 400 understood this. Its suspension was softer, more compliant, tuned for serenity rather than engagement. It wasn't as good dynamically, but it felt more expensive. It felt like luxury. The Q45 suspension was technology for technology's sake. Nissan assumed buyers would appreciate the engineering brilliance once they experienced it. They didn't. Luxury buyers wanted reliability and peace of mind, not hydraulic complexity and four-wheel steering. They wanted a car that worked perfectly without requiring them to understand how it worked. Being technically superior doesn't matter if you can't convince people to care. And convincing people to care about hydraulic actuators and four-wheel steering meant convincing them to pay for repairs most mechanics couldn't diagnose. Dealers had been begging for changes since 1990. They watched customers walk past the Q45 daily. They fielded questions about resale values they couldn't answer with confidence. Early Q45 owners were already discovering the problem. Their $40,000 sedans were depreciating faster than comparable Lexus or Mercedes models. Trade-in values were soft. Private buyers were skeptical. The car that was supposed to hold its value like a German luxury sedan was losing money like a failed experiment. By the time Nissan realized the problem, the market had already made its choice. Nissan was playing a high-stakes game of engineering chess. While Nissan was obsessed with hydraulic pressure, Toyota was obsessed with a glass of champagne. You remember the commercial? A pyramid of crystal glasses balanced on the hood of an idling LS 400. The engine revved, and the glasses did not move. It was a masterclass in marketing. Nissan was perfecting algorithms while a rival just down the road prepared a move so simple and so devastating it would turn Infiniti's masterpiece into a ghost overnight. Nissan had built a car that thought for the driver. Just down the road, Toyota was preparing a car that did not want the driver to think at all. The Lexus LS 400 launched the same year as the Q45. Both were flagship sedans from Japanese automakers entering the luxury market for the first time. Only one succeeded. Toyota's strategy was brilliantly simple. They studied the Mercedes-Benz S-Class and then built the same car better and cheaper. The LS 400 gave buyers exactly what they recognized as luxury: a traditional chrome grille, wood trim throughout the cabin, an interior that felt like a living room on wheels. The famous champagne glass test became legendary when engineers balanced champagne glasses on the idling engine, and the glasses did not tip. Lexus did not try to educate buyers. They showed the car and emphasized quality and value. The LS 400 cost around $35,000. A comparable Mercedes S-Class cost over $60,000. Everything about the Lexus approach was calculated to make buyers feel safe. The Q45 made buyers feel uncertain. Uncertain about the styling and uncertain whether a car without a grille would hold its value. By 1991, the LS 400 had become the best-selling luxury sedan in America. The Q45 struggled. Even with superior handling and a more powerful engine, it could not overcome the styling confusion and marketing missteps. The market had delivered its verdict. Toyota understood human psychology better than Nissan understood engineering. The LS 400 succeeded because it gave people what they already wanted. The Q45 failed because it tried to convince people they wanted something different. The Q45 was already struggling to find its footing against the Lexus juggernaut. Then the ground beneath both companies began to give way. By 1991, Japan's asset bubble did not deflate. It exploded. Real estate values collapsed overnight. Banks that had handed out loans like candy suddenly faced insolvency. Corporations that had expanded recklessly began massive layoffs. The money printing machine stopped, and the bill came due. Nissan's profits evaporated. The company that had funded the 901 movement with unlimited budgets was now fighting for survival. By 1993, Nissan posted its first annual loss since World War II. In 1993, Nissan announced it would end vehicle production at Zama, one of its oldest plants. Production ultimately stopped in March 1995, making Nissan the first Japanese automaker to close a factory in the post-war era. Thousands of workers were laid off. This was not just about a car company losing money. This was a moment. The closure of Zama was symbolic of how completely the bubble had burst. The plant had been operating since 1965 and employed over 4,000 people. Workers who had spent their entire careers at Nissan were suddenly unemployed in an economy where no one was hiring. The Japanese media covered the closure as a national tragedy. Photos of workers leaving the plant for the final time ran on front pages across the country. These were not just jobs disappearing. This was the dismantling of the post-war Japanese economic miracle. The assumption that lifetime employment was guaranteed. The belief that dedication to a company meant security for a family. The idea that working hard and following the system would provide stability. All of those assumptions collapsed with the Zama plant gates. Inside Nissan headquarters, the mood shifted from denial to panic. Meetings that had once focused on technology and performance now centered on survival. Departments competed for shrinking budgets. Projects were evaluated not on their technical merit, but on their immediate return on investment. The engineers who had been heroes during the bubble years were now viewed as liabilities. Their expensive ideas and uncompromising standards were luxuries the company could no longer afford. The 901 movement became an embarrassment, a reminder of how reckless Nissan had been and how disconnected from financial reality. Internal documents from 1993 and 1994 show executives scrambling to distance themselves from the very programs they had championed just 3 years earlier. The message was clear: the age of ambitious engineering was over, and the age of pragmatic cost management had begun. Inside Nissan, the atmosphere shifted from confidence to survival mode. Engineers who had been told to build the best cars in the world were now told to cut costs wherever possible. Programs were canceled, projects were shelved. The 901 movement, which had seemed invincible just 3 years earlier, was quietly abandoned. No one wanted to talk about building the best handling cars in the world when the company was hemorrhaging money. The Q45 became a victim of this new reality. Dealers had been begging for changes since 1990. They watched customers walk past the Q45 daily. They fielded questions about resale values they could not answer with confidence. Early Q45 owners were already discovering the problem. Their $40,000 sedans were depreciating faster than comparable Lexus or Mercedes models. Trade-in values were soft. Private buyers were skeptical. The car that was supposed to hold its value, like a German luxury sedan, was losing money like a failed experiment. Nissan had no choice. In 1994, they released a facelift that was essentially a corporate apology. A traditional chrome grille appeared on the front end, replacing the smooth body-colored panel. Wood trim was added to the interior. The minimalist philosophy was abandoned entirely. Nissan called it joining the competition. What they really meant was surrender. 5 years insisting that buyers would eventually appreciate the original design. 5 years defending the grille-less front end as elegant and modern. 5 years arguing that wood trim was dishonest and unnecessary. 5 years burning through dealer patience and customer goodwill. The 1994 facelift was an admission printed in chrome and walnut veneer. Nissan had been wrong, and the market had been right all along. Buyers wanted traditional luxury cues. Nissan would finally give them. But the damage was done. The Q45's reputation was already cemented. It was the weird luxury car without a grille, the one that tried too hard to be different, and the one that depreciated faster than it should have. Adding chrome and wood in 1994 did not erase 5 years of confusion and depreciation anxiety. The second generation arrived in 1997. It was essentially a rebadged Nissan Sima, the luxury sedan sold in Japan. The car lost 90 kilograms of weight. The engine shrank from 4.5 liter to 4.1 liter, producing 266 horsepower instead of 278. More significantly, the exotic technology disappeared. The full active suspension was eliminated entirely. Heikes four-wheel steering was gone. The systems that had defined the original Q45's character were sacrificed in the name of cost reduction. Nissan disguised this as simplification. They claimed buyers wanted a more straightforward luxury experience. What they did not say was that maintaining those complex systems during the recession was impossible. The budget was not there. The ambition was not there. The second-generation Q45 was tuned for comfort rather than engagement. The suspension became softer. The steering became lighter. Electronics like anti-lock brakes and traction control became standard, and a limited slip differential was added. But the car's soul had changed. It was competent. It was comfortable. It was completely ordinary. The third generation launched in 2002. Nissan brought back the 4.5-liter V8, now the VK45DE, producing similar power. They added a 5-speed automatic transmission. They even included features like laser cruise control, showing that technology had not been abandoned entirely, but by then, nobody cared. The Q45 had become just another luxury sedan in a market dominated by Lexus, BMW, and Mercedes. It had no identity, no reason to exist. Infiniti discontinued the Q45 in 2006. The brand pivoted to SUVs and the G35 sports sedan, which actually sold well. The flagship luxury sedan experiment was over. The final irony is that many first-generation Q45s are still running today. The overbuilt VH45DE engine and robust chassis construction meant the cars could survive for decades with basic maintenance. Owners who bought them new often kept them for 200,000 miles or more. The cars outlasted the brand's ambition. They outlasted the bubble economy that created them. They became monuments to a moment when Japanese automakers believed they could rewrite the rules. That moment did not last long, but the cars did. The $40,000 gamble had a simple answer. When you give engineers unlimited money and tell them to build the best car in the world, you get something the world is not ready to appreciate. The Q45 was a monument to a moment that can never be repeated. A moment when budgets were unlimited and engineers were told to build for eternity, not for quarterly earnings. That moment ended with Japan's bubble economy. It ended when the accountants took the spreadsheets back from the dreamers. Seoul is filling exhaust valves with sodium, even though no buyer will ever know. It is forging crankshafts from steel when cast iron would do. It is adding hydraulic actuators for the sake of perfection, not profit. Modern luxury cars are engineered to last exactly as long as the warranty period. The Q45 was engineered as if every car would be driven for 300,000 miles. That world never existed, even in 1990, but the engineers believed it should, and they built the car accordingly. Today, a first-generation Q45 with 200,000 miles will still start instantly and pull hard to redline. The cars outlasted the bubble. They outlasted Nissan's ambition. That's what we have lost. The belief that a car should be built to last forever, regardless of whether it makes financial sense. The Q45 failed because it tried to teach people what they should want. The Lexus LS400 succeeded because it gave people what they already wanted. Being technically superior does not guarantee success, but it guarantees respect. It guarantees that decades later, people will recognize what was attempted when ambition exceeded caution. The Q45 reminds us of a time when engineers built for forever, not for the next quarter. If you remember when cars had soul, subscribe to Good Old Things.